And India Today has accessed a photo of the accused in the Harsha murder case. This is the first image of the accused who's been taken into custody. He's been identified as Kashif, a local from Shivamogga. He's been taken into custody in the Harsha murder case. The first confirmation, the first image on your screens there, right here on India Today, of the accused who's been taken into custody in the Harsha murder case by the Shivamogga cops. That image on your screens is a man identified as Kashif, a local from Shivamogga. Is in custody. The police believe that he was involved in the stabbing and subsequent murder of Harsha. Nabila Jamal is joining us live from Shivamogga with more on this. Nabila, we're putting out the first image of the accused who's been taken into custody. Any details that we've really been able to pick up on this accused? We understand he's the main accused. Any information about the motive? Apologies, we've lost the connection with Nabila. We'll go across to her in just a bit for the details. But this is the first image here on India Today as we track the investigation very, very closely. Remember, several accused have already been taken into custody. The police are saying more arrests are to follow today as well. The main accused is a man from Shivamogga identified as Kashif. Let's listen in to exactly what the authorities have had to say on the investigation so far. The Shivamogga SP speaking to India Today.
The rest of the 5 men, would you be able to clarify?
2 persons have been arrested and remaining have been identified, and shortly those arrests also will be made.
Would you be able to name them?
The arrested persons are Kashif and Nadeem, 2 persons.
And where have you arrested them from?
That we still have to apply for remand. So after remand we'll be getting custody, so then we'll be able to tell much.
So any proof as such that these are the people who have been who have committed the crime?
Yes, we have certain eyewitnesses, and apart from that, during interrogation also we have caught some leads.
So that's the Shivamogga SP speaking to India Today, confirming that 2 accused have been taken into custody. Nabila Jamal is with us from Shivamogga. Nabila, what's the information so far that's been put out by the authorities on the arrest of Kashif? Any information on the motive?
Right, the motive is still uncertain, Akshita, but Kashif has been confirmed. In fact, his image right here on India Today first. Kashif is said to be from Shivamogga. The exact motive behind this murder is yet to be ascertained, but the police say that they're on it. There's still 1 person pending who needs to be arrested for now, but here's a flag march that's being carried out by the RAF. In fact, this is a sensitive area, Akshita, right now that we're walking towards. Very communally tensed area of Shivamogga, where we saw quite some arson, vandalism that took place here all through yesterday. In fact, really angry mobs had torched vehicles in this very same area that we see as we walk. And the RAF now trying to ensure calm and peace in this area by carrying out a flag march. In fact, we see heavy police deployment here in Shivamogga, even as Section 144 prohibitory orders have been imposed. We're seeing a strict, tense policing, in fact, by the forces here, because one can't really take a chance. What we saw yesterday was indeed intense, and it was really shocking to see the situation unfold right after large groups came out in protest owing to that murder, slamming the murder. In fact, linking it to the hijab row, the controversy. This is the very same district of Shivamogga where we saw unprecedented protests coming in against the hijab ban. In fact, we saw warring groups protesting on the hijab, one asking for it to be allowed inside and the other asking for it to be banned. And that sort of escalated to a point where we saw a murder that took place so far. The BJP, some of the leaders saying that it's linked to the hijab controversy, but you have quite a few, like Yediyurappa. B.S. Yediyurappa, in fact, is from Shivamogga. It's his district. It's very close to his heart. In fact, Shivamogga is. B.S. Yediyurappa says that this is not linked to the hijab row, but nonetheless, it's for the police right now to maintain calm and peace here. And it's, as we see, locals, the residents around here, of course, very worried about the situation that's unfolded. If I can ask my camera person to pan here, you have locals, of course, very keenly watching the developments here. As you know that there is a curfew in this district. There isn't shops, no establishments that have been allowed to open. We're looking at schools and colleges also have been fully shut. So here locals, of course, very very concerned about the situation, peace and harmony in this locality. This is the same locality where we saw some intense protests, where protesters, we believe, vandalized property because they were so agitated and angry over the murder that now we see a complete curfew, a complete shutdown in the Shimoga district. No establishments have been allowed to open, nothing at all, unless it's an emergency. We see the Sigehatti area. This is exactly the area where the violence took place and unfolded yesterday. We're seeing even medical shops, for that matter, being shut. It's entirely shut. There's no way that anyone's allowed to open up their establishment because the police have given out strict orders. We saw, in fact, the police even trying to chase away any stray walkers trying to walk on a main road. They were literally asked to leave and take the side lanes and not create any commotion. Very strict policing. Like I say, here is the RAF flag march, only to ensure that there is some kind of order that is maintained in this district. Over the last week, in fact, Shimoga has really seen some tense protests on the hijab controversy. It started off, and then we saw yesterday how it ended over the murder of Harsha, who's a 23-year-old Bajrang Dal activist. Again, like I say, a very sensitive area this is. And we see, of course, residents, they're very concerned about their safety. And like you see it in the visuals as well, we're seeing people living parallelly. You have the people of different communities, the Hindus, the Muslims, all of them living parallelly in this entire area. So one can only imagine when a communal situation occurs like this, how residents are the first, locals are the first here to bear the brunt. And that's what we hear that has happened in this entire area, that several vehicles were torched. There was arson that was reported. There were swords that some of them protesters were wielding swords. The police, of course, tried to contain the situation at that point, but it did go out of hand. And because law and order was a serious concern, we understand that 1,000 police officials, extra troops have been deployed in this entire area of Sigehatti in Shimoga, which is a really tense, communally charged area. And as we see, this is the RAF flag march that has now been initiated by the department, only to ensure that people here feel a sense of safety. Shimoga, so long, it has communities, different communities living so long in harmony. This could be unprecedented, what we saw here in Shimoga district, where we saw some intense communal clashes. A real, possibly for the first time, is what locals and the residents say, that a situation like this has taken place. It hasn't happened to this magnitude in the past. There could have been an undercurrent which really has surfaced like never before. And that's what's worrisome, because now it's already triggered a really tense situation among the student community in Shimoga. Shimoga has a really large student community, many of them living in this area and these districts. And of course, locals, as much as I say it, is not enough. They're really worried for their own safety, and we're already looking at a year and a half of a lull over the pandemic. And now here, with this kind of communal tension, we're looking at establishments that shut again, really resulting in losses for the locals in this area. Here, in fact, the police have requested locals, in case they see any kind of commotion, a number has been issued. They've been given a helpline number as well to call and report if at all they find anything untoward or is something that is slightly worrisome, then they can report immediately. But here are the locals, of course, very keenly watching this flag march by the RAF, because it is important right now to instill this kind of confidence among the people here, the residents, who we see have so long lived in peace, but this possibly is the first time that they've lost. They really are upset with the kind of situation that prevails. And like I did mention, Akshita, this is a large student community that hails from Shimoga, and they are very active, very vocal, very opinionated student community here in this locality of Shimoga. And it seems like that's what surfaced while during the hijab controversy broke out, that each one of them had their opinion, and they were divided on their opinion. And that protest over the hijab controversy really grew to such a scale. In fact, this was the same district where we saw a bunch of boys wearing the saffron robe, the scarf and hoisting the saffron flag.
Yes.
That, in fact, created much of a controversy with Ishwarappa jumping in, almost legitimizing what had happened.
That's right.
And then, of course, DK Shivkumar making irresponsible statements. These politicians, in fact, going back and forth with what they say, really...
That's exactly the point. You know, that's vitiating the atmosphere further. Nabila, stay on with us as you're getting us that live report on the flag march that's being conducted on the ground there in Shivamogga. I want to take this across to Rashmi Samant, activist who's joining us on this broadcast. Rashmi, what stands out for me is that in a state like Karnataka, which has never seen these kind of scenes of, you know, communal flashpoints, of violence, of flag marches being conducted on the streets of districts like Shivamogga, the question that then arises and hits you in the face is how has it come to this now? In your view, what's led to this kind of ugly politics and even a murder of a young activist?
I don't think it's a sporadic event because Harsha has been on an extremist hit list as early as 2015, and it's verified that there are pages on Facebook, extremist pages, which were literally asking to eliminate him. And this was from, I think, as early as 2015. I think it was just allowed to fester due to ugly politics within the state, and it has resulted in what happened with Harsha. And I think political leaders on either sides are responsible for this. When, you know, these threats started coming in way back in 2015, it was Siddaramaia's government, and then governments have changed. We've had the Congress go out, we've had the BJP come in, we've had other parties break into. So I just feel like it's just dirty politics, which is affecting the lives of very young people. The hijab protests itself, it involved 13, 14-year-old girls and boys, and they should be in school and studying, not out there and, you know, sort of ruining their life. They've been out of school for 2 years, for God's sake, due to COVID. And this is the first opportunity that they've had to go back to school and to, you know, to kind of regain that sense of normalcy. But this is being politicized to an extent that even now they can't, you know, find any sense of normalcy despite having missed out on school for 2 years. And the murder of a very young Hindu activist, it's alarming because it actually breaks my heart because I come from the coastal belt. I hail from Udupi. I was born and raised there. So he could be anybody, you know, he could be my brother, he could be family to me, he could be one of my friends. It's that close to me. I myself am 23 years old. So it's just appalling. It's heartbreaking. At the same time, I feel that the politicians have a big role. Even today, when all of this has happened, a boy is dead. All they can think of is saying, oh, you made that irresponsible statement, which led to this. And, you know, back and forth and virtue signaling and masquerading.
True.
Instead of actually addressing the root cause that they have led to the situation. They've allowed it to fester for so long that today, I mean, day before yesterday, a young boy was killed. And I think this seriously needs to be curtailed. And it can only be curtailed if the people of Karnataka come together as a community and demand better from their leaders. Because I think people on all aisles of every political party has made some or the other irresponsible statement, trying to get some political mileage out of this situation. And whilst there are some merits and demerits to either sides of the argument, it is for the court to decide. And I think the court should take, I mean, even I have intervened because I truly believe that hijab should not be allowed in you know, college campuses. But I mean, within uniform, you know, in institutions which have a uniform, they shouldn't be allowed. And I'm taking it up in the High Court, not out on the you know,
do you think,
by making,
you know, Rashmi, you made some very, very valid points, and hopefully something like this, the fact that you're seeing a 23-year-old being murdered, would serve as a wake-up call. It hasn't so far for our politicians. But Rashmi, do you believe that, you know, this is linked to the entire hijab controversy? Because you mentioned how there were threats to Harsha, which his family's also mentioned back in 2015. What's led to things reaching this scale now that unfortunately he was attacked and stabbed to death?
Well, I still honestly believe that there is some link because these threats have been coming in since 2015 and it has been linked to his Hindu activism since then. And, you know, it can't just happen overnight that a 23-year-old is just murdered out of the blue. So there has been, you know, extremist elements have been threatening him since very long. And he's been very active in the hijab protest, which has been surrounded by certain extremist elements from time to time. So it just comes together in that sense to me. And his murder was lauded by that page, that ruthless page, Mangalore Muslims. They lauded the fact that he was killed, and they took pride in the fact that they were the first people to actually put out that call way back in 2015, as of yesterday. And it is actually worrisome when such pages are coming out and openly taking credit for such gruesome murders. It would only make one feel that there is a deeper, sinister connection. And, coastal Karnataka isn't as, black and white as one would think. We've got Bhatkal, we've got the Bhatkal brothers from Bhatkal, we've got ISIS links from time to time. So there have been extremist elements which have come there from time to time, which have found, which have made space for themselves. They've been eliminated from time to time, but they have made their space from time to time.
They found roots,
So,
yes, in many parts of coastal
roots there.
Karnataka, yes. Rashmi, just stay on with me. I have a few more questions for you. In the meanwhile, I just want to get a quick update from the ground also from Shivamogga, where Nabila was taking us through the kind of flag march that's happening there to ensure that there's no law and order situation that really plays out in Shivamogga. Nabila, the point I was making with Rashmi is also this. How has it come to this situation where in a state like Karnataka, we're seeing the need for flag marches, for additional deployment, for prohibitory orders, for schools and colleges to be shut after opening after 2 years?
Absolutely, Akshita. In fact, these are the same roads that we saw some really tense situation. A flag march, it appears, was almost mandatory to instill this kind of confidence among locals here, because, like I did mention, the situation that unfolded was really unprecedented. They've never seen a riot-like situation that happened here in the last 2 days. And locals, in fact, are certainly worried. And that's why you see every nook and cranny of this district of Shivamogga, we're seeing heavy police deployment. You see at the far end, you have Hoysala, a big police van there. You see locals who are, of course, peeping out of their homes only to see the flag march that we saw by the RAF, because this is certainly going to instill that confidence that the environment right now for them is safe. You saw the kind of vandalism that took place. You saw vehicles being torched. You saw some of the protesters wielding swords, and of course angry protesters over that murder. They wanted the perpetrators to be brought to book. In fact, the culprits, we understand 4 of them have been arrested, those accused. 1 still remains at large. One of them that we've confirmed here on India Today is Kashif. That's been confirmed. The image of which we've been flashing on our screens here has been confirmed by the SP of Shivamogga. But of course, they're not divulging too many details as to what was the motive behind this murder. And we understand that all the accused hail from Shivamogga. Where were they arrested, etc. All that needs to be established in the course of the investigation. But for now, a flag march by the RAF certainly has instilled confidence in the locals there. We see many of them peeping out, trying to just take one quick look at and to, of course, reassure themselves that there is heavy police deployment. Security is in full swing, trying to ensure that the situation around this entire Shivamogga district, which is a small town, it is a small town, a very progressive town, has people of different communities living together side by side. So any kind of communal trigger here will take just minutes for this entire beautiful town to really become a communal hotbed for friends to turn into foes, and that's what we don't want to see. Very, very tragic scenes that unfolded yesterday, and of course we condemn this murder of Harsha, the 23-year-old Bajrang Dal activist, but the police, of course, are on the job. They're trying to ensure that people feel safe and they do their duty, and that, of course, locals believe and trust in the police department that they will ensure that the culprits are arrested and not take law in their own hands. This is what we see in Shivamogga, a very tense, eerie silence that we see here, but thankfully so far there is no commotion on the streets as we see.
Let's hope that remains the case. You're seeing additional deployment there on the ground, as Nabila was also pointing out, and that hopefully will ensure that peace remains in these areas of Shivamogga. Nabila, I request you to stay on with us. I just want to get our viewers up to speed with all that's happened so far in this case. As far as the investigation is concerned, also, Harsha's family members have spoken to us here on India Today. They've claimed that this is a conspiracy. They've claimed that Muslim groups were behind the attack on Harsha. Listen to what they also have to say in our next report.
Shivamogga is on the edge. Schools and colleges are shut. A curfew is imposed as tensions rise over the murder of Bajrang Dal worker Harsha.
So when you're talking about curfew, it means that even essential services will be shut?
Yeah, not essential service. Basic things will be there. Other than that, all things will be shut.
So this will be till 24th morning?
23rd morning.
23rd morning.
There is high security all around amid the threat of violence. Harsha's death has divided the state, which was already split apart by the hijab showdown. Harsha's family is in shock.
ಹೌದಾ ಅಲ್ವಾ ಸರ್, ಅವನಿನ್ನೇನೇನು ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ನು ಹಿಂದೂ, ಅವ್ನು ಜೈರಾಮ್ ಶ್ರೀರಾಮ್ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡೇ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟ. ನನ್ನ ತಮ್ಮ ನೋಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಅವನ್ನ. ಹೆತ್ತೊಟ್ಟೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ನೋಡೋಣ ಸರ್? ಇಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಕ್ರೂರಿಗಳಿದಾರ? ಮನುಷ್ಯತ್ವ ಮಾನವೀಯತೆಗೆ ಬೆಲೆನೇ ಇಲ್ವಾ? ಅವ್ರ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲೂ ಮಕ್ಳಿರ್ತಾರಲ್ವಾ, ಅವರು ಹೆತ್ತಿರ್ತಾರಲ್ವಾ, 1-2 ಈ ತರ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರ ಸರ್ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ? ಎಲ್ಲಾರ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲೂ ಈಗ ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲಾರು ಇದ್ದೀರಾ, ಆಚೆ ಹೋದವ್ರು ಒಳಗೆ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಹೇಳಿ? ಯಾವ್ದ್ರಲ್ಲೂ ಒಂದ್ ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಹುಡ್ಗ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡೇ ಇರೋ ನನಗೆ ಬರೀ ಒಂದು ಹರ್ಷ ಹಿಂದೂ ಅಂತ ಹೆಸರಿಟ್ಟು
ದೇಶ ಕಡಮ ಮನೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಕೇಸರಿ ಶಾಲ ಇದಾವ ಸರ್. ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗೆ ಸನ್ಮಾನ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಬರೀ ಕೇಸರಿ ಶಾಲು ಮನೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಇದಾವೆ. ಮದ್ವೆ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಕಣೋ. ಸುಮ್ನೆ ನನ್ನ ದೇಶಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಸಾಯ್ಬೇಕು. ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಚ್ಚಿದ್ಯಾ ನೀನು ನಿನ್ ಮದ್ವೆ? ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಹಿಂಗೆ.
The police have made the first arrests in the murder case. 2 suspects held have been identified as Kashif and Nadeem.
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಯಾವ ತನಿಖೆಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಇನ್ನು ವರದಿ ಬರಬೇಕಷ್ಟೇ. ಕೆಲವರನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಇನ್ನು ಕೆಲವರನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಸರ್. ಈಗ ಸ್ಥಳದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನೇನು ಹೇಳಲ್ಲ. 3 ಜನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಒಟ್ಟು. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ವಿಚಾರಣಾ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಆ ಸ್ಥಳಗಳನ್ನ ಈ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ಲೋಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಒಳ್ಳೇದಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ಅದನ್ನ ಬಾಯ್ ಬಿಡಿಸಿ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ ಆಗಲಿಲ್ಲ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ.
Police are tracking 2 more suspects.
किसका सपोर्ट है ये पता चलेगा. सपोर्ट बिगर हुआ नहीं है, सपोर्ट हुआ है. किसी का सपोर्ट बिगर तो ये काम होना मुश्किल है. क्यों कर इतना छोटे लोग इतना बड़ा हादसा करने के लिए उन लोगों को हिम्मत कैसा हुआ है? पता जरूर लगेगा.
Harsha's murder has sparked a fresh round of political sniping. Karnataka Minister Ishwarappa, already facing the heat after saying that the saffron flag may replace the tricolour one day, has alleged that stones were pelted on the funeral procession of Harsha.
ಯಾವ ಶವ ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಮೆರವಣಿಗೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಮುಸಲ್ಮಾನರು ಹೆಚ್ಚಿಗೆ ಇರೋಂಥ ಜಾಗಗಳಿಂದನೂ ಕೂಡ ಕಲ್ಲುಗಳು ಬಂದು ಬಿದ್ವು. ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಈ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದನೂ ಕೂಡ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಲ್ಲು ಹೊಡೆದ್ರು. ಇದು ಎರಡೂ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಮುಸಲ್ಮಾನರು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕುತಂತ್ರ ರಾಜಕಾರಣ ನಡೆಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
The opposition has called for the Home Minister's resignation over the law and order situation.
Whoever there as accused persons in this murder case, they must be booked. I demand the Home Minister's resignation because he is from Shivamogga district.
The BJP is demanding an NIA investigation into the murder of the Bajrang Dal worker. Saffron groups are also linking the killing to the ongoing hijab face-off in the state. The government says the investigation so far has not revealed any link. With Nolan Pinto, Bureau Report, India Today.